Okay, now we want to go ahead and let y'all hear for the first time ever our intro theme to Oddio Oddcast.
Exclusive.
And that was our intro theme. Y'all have heard it before us.
Right. Yes, this is
doesn't exist yet. As of right now, it does not exist. So I hope it was cool.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking, we got good taste.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Whatever we just did.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm actually very happy with it. I could listen to that again. In fact, let's fucking do it.
Yeah, play it one more time.
Okay. So, we're your host. I'm Maya.
And I am Jason.
And this is Oddio Oddcast. We're going to talk about movies, music, games, life, the universe, and everything, all through the perspective of art is the idea.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If it's odd, it's here.
Right. If it's odd, it's coming from us, and it's authentic. It's authentic.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Only we can say stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah. This is from Some Odd Strangers. So you've probably seen our YouTube stuff. We've got Friends Playing Badly. There's another podcast we're also doing called Some Odd Podcast. And then there's a bunch of little videos and short films and on our Some Odd Strangers YouTube channel. We've also been known as Ladder Velocity. Did a couple movies, documentaries, concerts, stuff like that. So, but we've tried this before, so we're venturing back into it again.
Yeah.
Podcast, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, we were always starting and stopping because life happens, but the intent was always there, and it still is. And this, going forward, you're going to get to know us a lot better if you didn't get to know us from
before.
Prior.
Yeah, and that's the voice you're hearing of Jason is the writer of the infamous Midnight Access Radio, which you may or may not have listened to because it's been in random places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all over the podcasting board, and when all before Spotify. Yeah, it predates Spotify. Yeah. So if you were looking for entertainment podcasts, you probably found us because we were the first.
Before Night Vale,
right?
There was Midnight Access Radio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard they were fans. So
Exactly.
That's we were inspiration. That's cool. It's cool to think about that.
Exactly. I've also heard that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. From the same source.
Yeah. Exactly. You heard it here first, folks. Okay. So we saw The Flash last night. It was Jason's birthday was yesterday, and so we went and saw The Flash. And overall, I liked it. It is my personal favorite DCEU movie to date for me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I completely forgot about some of the DCEU movies. That's what was so crazy. Like when I was really thinking about all of my favorites, I was like, man, you know what? That Shazam was all right, but I forgot there was a part 2. I forgot Aquaman existed. I forgot Batman v Superman existed. I really forgot about Batman v Superman. Wow. Martha.
Yeah. No. And then and Justice League was I hardly remembered Justice League, but I recently saw the Snyder Cut, and I'm happy to say that I've heard correctly that the Snyder Cut version of Justice League was amazing. It was actually really good. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. They should have released that, even though it was 4 hours long.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, most movies are that long anyway, because if they got a bunch of, if it's like a bunch of guys coming together to do one thing after we've seen individual films of theirs, or they're teasing that they're going to be individual films like DC, that they tried to go the opposite way where they're like, you know what, we're going to introduce you to Justice League and then we're going to give you the individual movies, but they couldn't get their schedule situated, their calendar of these releases, which is part of the problem. We'll probably get into it
Yeah.
in a later tangent if we remember it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, they were not very organized. It was very obvious. And yeah, Justice League. Oh god.
Yeah.
It just felt forced.
No, yeah, so that, all of that leads us to the biggest thing we want to talk about here is the whole concept of superhero fatigue that everyone's kind of talking about. Because there was I know there was a lot of beyond shade right now on The Flash that it wasn't doing so well. But I don't know, Jason and I both, we have kind of our problems with it, but overall, it was not as bad as everyone was kind of saying it was. At least I didn't think so.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, not at all. What's
CGI was terrible.
Yeah, there's no argument there. That CGI was horse manure. I mean, but it was tolerable. Like, especially if we knew it going into it, if we were thinking about it, like it was something we knew to expect. And I always put the D in DCU to me just dark, because all of their films just are very dark. Like if you're watching it at night, you need some kind of light on just to reflect around your eyeballs. So when you come back to normalcy, if you cut the lights on after watching a 3-hour DC movie, you're not having to adjust your eyes to the light. Like, oh God, I had to strain very bad. But the one thing about this one was there was certain parts of the cinematography was dark, but it was lathered in colors. They tried at least.
Yeah, like Ben Affleck's Batman outfit. I actually really enjoyed that. It was a colorful. Well, it wasn't like totally colorful, but it was a nice shade of blue.
Yeah,
it was not a lighter blue, but it wasn't as dark. It wasn't black. It wasn't like a dark blue, but it was blue. It reminded me a lot of Adam West's cape outfit.
Yeah.
It had a kind of, I don't know what that color is, like a teal, I guess. I don't know.
I know.
It wasn't like dark blue, but it also wasn't light blue. It was just blue.
Yeah.
But I liked Affleck's Batman in this one a lot more. Even there was the Justice League version of it, which I enjoyed. But this one, I really liked Affleck's Batman in this one.
Right.
Weirdly enough. Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't so bad. Like the style of the bat suit, but also as a Batman, because I went into even the early announcements of him being Batman all those years ago. I went into it with the whole like, man, nah, and it wasn't even just the part of all the Ben Affleck hate that came out of nowhere for whatever warranted reasons, because I don't even remember. We get to a point, it's almost like Nickelback. We forget why we even joined in on the hate. Like,
I feel like it was back around the Kevin Smith timeline, around Batman, Affleck was the bomb and Phantoms type stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's around like Jersey Girl and all that. Everyone's starting to kind of hate on Affleck. And all that. But yeah, no, it's funny. You're right. I kind of forget right now.
Yeah.
I know it had something to do with that. It was around the Kevin Smith era. He was doing something. Some of the movies. I think it was a series. Pearl Harbor, I think probably was a big reason of that.
Yeah. That is true, man. Yes, that little bit of time, there was something about it that came out where people just joined in. And it wasn't even like one movie that did it for them. It was like once there was like a series of flops, it was almost like Hollywood kind of created it in a way where they're like, oh, these movies are not major like blockbuster hits, and this is the lead guy. And whenever there's a lead of any film, like like a series of films where they just flop over and over again, they start to say that it's whoever was the lead star's fault. Like people didn't want to go to theaters because Ben Affleck or whatever, not even taking into consideration either the story, if it's interesting to people, or other people that are in it.
Didn't like because a lot of people were like, I don't like Tom Cruise, so I'm not going to go see a Tom Cruise movie.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Which we can easily connect to fatigue. I think there's a key connection with superhero fatigue and kind of celebrity fatigue, because right now, everyone's saying superhero fatigue, but back in the day, it would be celebrity fatigue. You get sick of Tom Cruise after a while.
Right.
Every now and again, it would kind of cycle to where people were just kind of done with Yeah, like Ben Affleck, and all that. Or I don't know who else. What other major celebrities got hit hard?
Oh man.
Tom Cruise, Ben Affleck. Tom Cruise is like, it kind of circled back. It would be like, oh, we're all about Tom Cruise now, and then all of a sudden, nah, we're not really big Tom Cruise, and then now we're Tom Cruise again. Yeah. And it would just go back and forth.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. Which is probably why he's stuck with like franchises or typecasting. If it wasn't like Mission Impossible and you were seeing him for like the crazy stunts he did and everything in between, then you were seeing him for Mission Impossible type. Like Jack Reacher or can't think Minority Report or like where he's
true. Yeah.
Minority
Report is a total almost Mission Impossible movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's crazy because like it was almost like simultaneously people were hating on him for Vanilla Sky. It was like Minority Report was alright or anything else that he was doing that was kind of that type. But Vanilla Sky, that was because of that was his fault. When in reality, you could say you can't really say it's his fault. You could say it's like a casting director's fault of like and even a director's fault, like an aesthetic fault of like trying to do a surreal type of movie and it doesn't hit. If that's the way the script was written and you get a director that can't really convey that, then there's a problem. And then you get an actor that's not used to being in like surreal type of movies or movies that are kind of trying to like a dreamy type of film. Yeah, Tom Cruise wouldn't be the person I would think. But it's cool to think that he read the script and said, I want to do this. That he didn't just put himself in a box and want to do something different.
Yeah. You know? Like seeing him in a David Lynch movie would be interesting.
Yeah. Dude, yeah.
I would actually love to see David Lynch direct a Mission Impossible style movie starring Tom Cruise.
Oh, yeah.
And just see what that looks like. Just want to know what that looks like. That's it. Just they can do a short film. I just want to know what it looks like. But
yeah, that man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you think of David Lynch when he tried Dune, and it's like you can. If you're somebody that can think outside the box of what he was trying to do, then you can kind of see that where he would do a spy thriller type espionage type of
because so on Fatigue, David Lynch is another one who people I don't think there's a phrase for it, but there is a type of like Lynch-esque fatigue where everyone's just kind of like done with these crazy surreal David Lynch style. Like I think after Inland Empire, it was really big where everyone was just like kind of sick of like, I don't understand what this movie's about and I'm getting kind of tired of it type deal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from? The concept of fatigue in cinema.
I think it comes from either like it can be like two cases where there's too much of a good thing and maybe them being Hollywood thinking that that's what we want and it just coming from all these different places, all these different sources. Especially now it's been ramped up because of all the streaming services and them having their own identity and doing different things like Netflix. Pretty soon, like for example, pretty soon is going to be true crime fatigue because documentary after documentary. They got rid of so many documentaries when they first started. It's like they started their company on the backs of a lot of existing movies, documentaries, series, and then when they started to do their own originals, like that Kevin Spacey thingamajig. Glad I already forgot it because my brain is wiping away Kevin Spacey.
House of Cards?
Yes, House of Cards. Now I remember it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
That final season was good, actually. It all hinged on Robin Wright, and she pulled it off. She did amazing. I'm probably like one of 3 people who have seen House of Cards to the end. Yeah. Just because I really wanted to see Robin Wright finish off that show, and it ended amazingly.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. See, that's one of those things I could think of if they had that in mind to like kill off Kevin Spacey's character and then she kind of usurps him, then that was a good idea. But I'm pretty sure they didn't have that in mind. But that's the perfect way to like segue a story with someone already established.
Well, in the case of House of Cards, I don't actually know if it originally was in mind, but this is a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen House of Cards. I'm about to spoil the final episode of season 5, so go and skip like a minute. I'll keep it short. But the final episode of season 5, has it where Kevin Spacey's character is basically, I forget the word, but he's no longer president anymore, and she, as vice president, becomes president. That's how season 5 ended.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she usurped him at the ending of season 5. So.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it is. Yeah. I don't know, but that's what I'm saying. It worked out perfectly for season 6 because we no longer cared anymore. And at that point, I really only wanted to see what happened with Robin Wright. I really loved her character. So that ended up working out for me because I was able to totally focus on Robin Wright for that final season.
Badass.
So, yeah. Anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
But
man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you think that the concept of cinema? So I guess cinema fatigue is in essence the word that we're kind of talking about. But do you think that cinema fatigue is really in my head? I associate it a lot to television fatigue, where so the 90s, every television series had like 21 to 24 episodes a season.
Yeah.
And any more than that, it's because it would pass 2 seasons. I mean, seasonals, like, because it was autumn and going into winter and spring, pretty much. Like, there would be the fall season, and then it would start the spring season, they called it. I mean, which I always hated because it started in September, which I guess technically was fall, but it ended. Well, no, because winter technically is the end of December, so no, that was fall.
Yeah.
But they never called it winter; they called it spring, even though sometimes it would start in like February, which was winter.
Right.
But I guess they technically wouldn't start back until March.
Right. Yeah. Cause spring. Yeah. True. Man, it's been so long. I forget.
Yeah, I don't even remember how it did it. Anyways, point is they had 21 to 24 episodes. While the UK is doing, 10 episodes at the time? 8 to 10 episodes?
Right.
And then, do you remember, was it streaming that kind of turned it around in America? Where we're no longer doing, 21 to 24. We're doing, like, 6 to 12?
Yeah. Yeah, because it almost seemed like... that used to be like the HBO model. Like it was different from like how network television was different from cable.
Yeah,
because
right. Okay, yeah, it was HBO because that was the Sopranos. The one about the funeral. The mortuary. 6 Feet Under. Yeah. They had like 12, 13 episodes.
Right.
It was like half a season almost. Or it felt like half a season at the time. Because, I mean, Monk was having 22, 23 episodes. House, 22, 23.
Yeah.
ER, all of them are going on crazy long. And then all of a sudden you have HBO with 12, 13 episodes. And they're telling meatier stories.
Yes.
Which was insane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think streaming kind of allowed it to pick up further where they started doing 12 episodes. That became the norm. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I can't really think of any other channel other than maybe like FX. I'm trying to think of any other ones that just kind of compacted their stories where they didn't span anything longer than 10 episodes, 10 to maybe 15. There's an exception, like It's Always Sunny, because that was one of the shows that kicked off FX as a channel to watch, because before that was just reruns of Fox shows like In Living Color and stuff like that, baseball shows or baseball airings on FX. Then they started with It's Always Sunny and The Shield, and then once those became hits, they're like, oh, we got something, Nip Tuck, all these different shows. So
were those all around like 20 episodes?
Yeah.
Okay.
They
wasn't the season 1 of Always Sunny short though? Well, but that's just because they were trying to see if people like it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They were. It was a short comedy series. The season 1 was short, but because for that exact reason, because it started at the same time as this show called Starved, which I've missed, but I know they couldn't have gone any longer with that, because that was, I think, that was only 10 episodes. It was basically about a bunch of people that were in this. They were I hate when I forget the names of certain things when I start rambling about other stuff. But like, they're basically people who are trying to get over bulimia in different ways. And it was a dark comedy. It actually had like a really good idea behind it. I actually have the series because when I found.
I never heard of that one.
Different means of.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll show it to you one day. Maybe we'll talk about it. It was the first time I've ever seen Sterling K. Brown, which he went on to be on that This Is Us show and some other. Some good movies. I can't even think of all of them now.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I ever seen him and the director that did it. It was the first time I heard about him. He was one of those indie directors that came out at the time around like Kevin Smith and Richard Linklater and a lot like the he was one of the ones that had a successful movie called If Lucy Fell. It was moderately successful and it started to kick his career off, but then it seemed like he had started having personal issues, so much so that FX did a mini-series based on his life and him trying to find a girlfriend, because one of his issues was trying to find a date and get married.
Yeah.
Which I want to find that series because it was very intriguing, and like he just bared himself completely. He was just a flawed human being, but he wasn't like a bad person. He just had, kind of like all of us. That it was like we show the flawed side of us more than others that try to mask it in public. And he was one of those ones that was willing to do it. And I'm remembering this show because of us talking about it right now, because I completely forgot about that show. And wow. But yeah, he was one of those indie directors that never really made it, but his show was one of the ones that was the very first show, because it came on right before It's Always Sunny. His show was the very first show that kicked off FX as what they are now, showing original content. But his just didn't get picked up for the second season, and It's Always Sunny was still not a hit, but they continued with it because there was something there. And then when Danny DeVito came in, that's when it just became the show with Danny DeVito. It's like, no, no, It's Always Sunny.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a whole nother topic I'd like to talk about one day.
But you're saying with Always Sunny and all of them, they were having FX is having 20 some episodes and HBO is doing like 12, 13.
Yeah.
But why do you think the change is with less episodes?
Because they like all these channels are trying to be more like trying to take from FX having quality shows, but at the same time cutting to like the meat of things the way that AMC does, because AMC I feel like kind of kicked it off. Like when Walking Dead and these shows started to come out, it was right at the cusp of the streaming services. Like the streaming services were starting, like Netflix as a streaming service was starting. They already did the DVD by mail stuff, but having shows this short was more palatable for people that are watching at home, and at the same time it had a lot to do with, I guess, them noticing that people are watching episodes back to back, which binge watching, before that became a name. They were noticing that once an episode ended, people weren't like picking up the remote and moving on to other things. And it had a lot to do with the way they were ending a lot of these shows. A lot of these shows relied way more on cliffhangers, whereas on if it was a show that was on network television, if it was a weekly episodic show, or X-Files was kind of like the creature of the week type of episodes, but there's still a background narrative to kind of complete by the end of the series. It didn't leave us hanging every single week with oh my God, I can't wait. Because they knew there was a lot of start and stop on television. There was a lot of the show would start, then once you're really getting into it, oh man, a commercial break. And then they come back, and then there's the meat of the episode, and it's like, hell yeah, and then commercial break, and then by the end of it, it's kind of like the feeling that, this show's about to end, if that's a 30-minute show with 3 commercial breaks. So it's like, man, now it's over. So they knew we couldn't wait. If it was a 30-minute show, it's punishing to have just really 20 minutes of TV, wait for that once a week, and then come back. That's why it wasn't like TGIF. It was easy to get through. They didn't have, oh my God, what's Urkel gonna do? Stay tuned for next week.
Yeah.
They would save that for the hour-long shows to keep you like wondering. If it was like the show Dallas back in the day, like who shot JR? Find out next season.
Yeah.
And like stuff like that made it to where like, hell yeah, we were all congregating in front of the TV because that was a water cooler discussion. We all were thinking that same thing while we're at work talking to friends or anything else. So by the time the show started again, we knew we were amongst other people watching something. That's why the final season of Sopranos was such a big hit. That's why Premiere Walking Dead was a big hit. That's why Lost was a big hit until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like it's like the metrics kind of changed it, and then once the streaming services noticed that people are watching these things back to back, and it's because every single episode is leading with a oh my god cliffhanger. That's when they start to shorten it even more, just so they can kind of rely on the cliffhangers, but it not be a crutch going over 20 episodes.
That makes a lot of sense then, because I know. Okay, so if we go back in time, 1920s, 1930s. And they got the pulp serials that are airing in front of some of the movies, like Superman. I think Dick Tracy was one. Oh man, I forget the names of the others right now. But anyways, they had like these 15, 20 minute, like essentially television on the big screen. Every single one of them would end in a cliffhanger. And then you'd have to, when you go next Saturday, you'd be able to pick up on the ending of that. But there was only so many you could do, because at some point, the audience wants a conclusion. And so that's where they would kind of end it. So it would kind of almost run for a full year, and then there'd be a break. And hence the whole season model of television, I'm assuming, is getting created at that point. So then, and then it's like because then that connecting with the pulp serial books, like I think Charles Dickens did it with oh man, I forget which novel he did it with. He did it with a few. Barney the Vampire was a big one. I think that ran for like 2 years, where it was like little sections of the chapter one. Each chapter was a small little section that'd be in the newspaper, and you could read what was going on, and the next Saturday it would continue with chapter 2, and so there was like 300 chapters. It's like a 2,000-page book if you put it all together, but it was supposed to be read like little snippets every Saturday or Sunday, whenever the newspaper dropped in your area back then. But each episode, each chapter ended on a cliffhanger, and they would try and milk it as much as possible. So I know Barney the Vampire ran for almost 2 full years, and some of these chapters end so ridiculously. And then some of them kind of repeat, where they just kind of extend and all that. So it's almost like the whole concept of what would later become television is ingrained in these pulp serials in newspaper articles, coming out chapter by chapter, which are requiring cliffhangers, so that way you guarantee you have readers next week and all of that. But then at some point they've learned the hard way that you have to end it. You can't go on forever, which again, fatigue kicks in at some point.
Yeah.
And so I feel like television and movie franchises are trying to find the balance between how far can we milk it before they turn on us, basically. And I feel like that's the big balance they all face, is at some point. I mean, one of the questions I had was, does fatigue exist? And I didn't bother even asking it, because it's like, well, yeah, no, clearly it does.
Oh yeah.
At some point, at some point, it's like, can we end the story? Like, there's no way that this is going to go on forever.
Right. No, that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy because it's in our subconscious. It's not something that's like we're thinking about all the time when we're watching these movies. It's something that we don't really feel until after the movie's done.
Yeah.
And because, if we're going to the theaters, we're giving them our money. That's the movies we pick and choose. Like, I completely forget what else was in the theater at that time, because it was basically just a laser guided focus to seeing The Flash. And surprisingly enough, it was still in the theaters, because if it was a lesser film, they would have gotten rid of it, even if it was a hit. Even if it was good, they were on to the streaming services, and it kind of goes into the whole that whole feeling of them just making more content, because on its own, it's able to stand on its own 2 legs in a theater. There's 6 to 8 movies that are competing with each other, and there's an audience for each one. But it's about really promoting it. Whereas once it hits the streaming services, you got a good week or 2 where when you turn on your Fire Stick, you'll see it on the front page, and then it's just blending in with everything else.
Yeah, and then it's just up to you to remember.
Yeah.
Or every now and again, if it randomly pops up, like 2 years later, it's like, oh yeah, I wanted to watch that movie.
I know.
Yeah. So it's all depending on the promoting of getting that scene, just because there's so much out there.
It's frustrating, because I want to see it all, but there's only so much time to watch everything. You know, you
Yeah.
gotta, you know, if it's streaming services that you're actually, you know, paying for and not sharing with someone
Yeah,
else,
yeah.
then, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
like you're paying for it for a
Yeah.
reason because you're working, you got a job, so you're
Exactly.
able to get all, yeah.
To any streaming services listening, no one shares anything
Uh-huh.
with anyone
No.
on this podcast.
No.
Yeah,
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 not
that
at all.
doesn't happen. Yeah, we're you know, we understand.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't
Yes.
do that. Big Lou agrees.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. If we have to have someone on a lie detector, we'll put Big Lou.
Yes, yeah.
He'll represent us.
Yeah,
he's another.
supposed to be-
He's another member of the Somewhat Strangers crew. You'll hear him in some later episodes.
Right.
Yeah, we're name dropping. It's the future, so then just come back later.
Or if you hear the episode with Big Lou before you hear this one, then
Then you know who it is.
Yeah.
And you can go ahead and not listen to this part.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You should have already fast forwarded.
Exactly. That's on you. But so okay, see what I find interesting about people complaining about superhero fatigue is this kind of, for me, I see it cycling in film history because the Western came out, right? And then it was really huge in the 40s, going into the 50s. You know, obviously you got the big names from John Ford, which, you know, it's all the way to Sergio Leone and the spaghetti Western movies and all of that, and the Corbucci films and all of that, going into, as it bleeds into the 60s and all that. The interest in Western as cinema has lasted a long time. I don't think it's gone away. So, but if you go back, there's articles in the 60s talking about Western fatigue. Like are we done with the Westerns? Is there anything more that can be said? Like, can we just move on as a genre? And again, it's treating it as if like that's the only thing that's out there, which I do find interesting, that when a genre becomes popular and it feels as if at some point everyone is kind of getting tired of it. But I think other people who didn't know about the genre are now interested in the genre. It's now being told in a way that they can connect with it.
Yeah.
And so now there's a bigger audience for it, but not every single story in that genre clearly they connected with, because the genre existed before these, let's call it like audience B. Before audience B knew about it, that was marketed toward audience A, who was always there for it and who loves it and who will watch it until the end of time. You know, there's a bunch of, for lack of a better phrase, there's a bunch of Western heads out there who just love Western cinema and Western movies and want to consume everything Western, and probably pissed off that there hasn't been a lot of major Western movies made in probably the past 20 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I think Unforgiven's kind of like maybe the last major one. There's definitely been Western movies made, but not like on such popular epic a scale and all that. Not until Antoine Fuqua comes back with Magnificent Seven with
with Denzel
and all of them.
Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. It's almost like when it does come back, it's a Western type. It's like the Magnificent Seven type. It's a bunch of people coming together for one cause. Run these baddies out of town type of causes. Whereas back then, there was more of diversity in the Western. Like you have like your more laid back Westerns and more action oriented. Like you have your, I guess John Wayne was his own thing.
Subgenre of Western. Yeah. No, yeah. And then you have your just kind of dramatic, there's all kinds of different stories being told in the Western genre, and there's all kinds of things that are being done differently in it. And you're right, it is very diverse, as most all genres are. I just think that at some point in time, a movie gets made that attracts audience B, and the producers rightfully are like, whoa, we can make more of this type. Wait, I didn't know we could do that. Which honestly, everyone says that producers think people are dumb. I just think most producers tend to be dumb. They don't really sorry, I'm burping a lot. They don't really understand that a lot of movies can do anything. Any genre can do anything.
Yeah.
Have anything and everything, and it's gonna be interesting.
Uh-huh.
I just gotta be creative enough. But but anyways, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so much like what's happening now, you have audience B who's like, oh wow, I'm really enjoying these type of stories, you know. And I think the whole first 10 years of the MCU really attracted audience B, C, D, E, whatever, all these other groups of people who were kind of like into this movie, but or this franchise. But even before Endgame hits, there was already talk of MCU fatigue. But Endgame hits, it takes the world by storm. It's this epic conclusion. People who kind of didn't like the MCU in general, they at least still love Endgame because it kind of gives a wrapping climax. People start comparing the MCU franchise to television series where they're essentially working like episodes toward a climactic series finale and all of that. But I mean, for me, I don't think that the MCU franchise is essentially television. That's just storytelling. It's just an epic parts, it's an epic story told in parts where those parts are singular movies. It's, television does that because it's every week. It's going all the way back to pulp serial novels where it's a chapter a week. It's right. That's essentially what television is. And if you're going to do that in cinema, it's going to take longer because it takes longer for those movies to pop out. They're popping out every 2 or 3 years, and each movie is operating like a chapter. But that's, I don't know. To me, I don't really see that as a complete argument to kind of dismiss the whole thing because it's just the essence of storytelling.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it really is.
Anyways, my point is simply, I think that at some point, because of the genres, the way that they are, whatever genre it is always, there's a distinct thing that someone has to love about that genre to continuously come back every single time. So like for, again, Western heads, there is an aspect of the West that they are coming back to because they love the whole concept of the Western genre, or the West in general, maybe as an abstract thing. So they'll milk everything. It's like a Harry Potter fan who just loves the world of Harry Potter, that anything Harry Potter, I'll milk up. You know what I mean? And so they'll take that, and so they just want to be part of that world. And so it doesn't really matter. The story doesn't matter. The budget or anything like that, or even the medium. It doesn't matter how the art is being expressed. It's just it's a part of that. I want it and I'll take it. The best example is Lovecraftian fanatics who just love the world of Lovecraft, that they will read works by people not H.P. Lovecraft and stories that are not so much about what you typically expect, just because it entails that world, that universe, the themes, all of that stuff.
Yeah. It continues on that tradition because that can be one of the examples of why his stories of transition to modern day for people to be able to read it was because he was the only one making these type of stories, and anyone that came afterwards were making it because, you can do this and it can be successful, or they were inspired by him. Yeah. So
and of course he's leaving his work public domain, well, essentially, where he's like, you can play around with it, use these characters, and everyone's picking up on it. And so again, it's almost like episodic storytelling. It's like, okay, we're going to pick up that mantle, and now I'm going to continue telling this unending story. So in a way, the stories don't have to end. So really, it's like Varney the Vampire all over again, where it's like milking it, except where Varney the Vampire just doesn't have enough to make it last beyond 2 years, because it's just one particular character, and there's only so much story you can tell in that particular person's life. If you have just genre as your focal point of the narrative, of like with Lovecraft, it's the concept of madness and the outer gods, and you can tell stories anywhere in the multiverse. Right. And it's so open, so therefore it's totally unending, that every new story is a new episode or a new chapter, whatever you want to call it, and it's continuing forever. That, of course, someone who is just not wanting to consume stories about madness or outer gods or the other or whatever is going to get tired of it. Yeah. Because that's not their special interest in a way. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there is going to be fatigue. But there is enough of an audience there that the story can continue unending. And I don't think that means that there is something wrong with the genre as a whole. Like, going back to superheroes, I don't think there's anything wrong with the superhero genre. Fatigue exists, but that's the superhero fatigue is existing simply because audience members B downward are just not that interested as audience members A. I don't know if that's am I making sense? Yeah. Trying to express this idea here. Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah. So for me, the whole concept of like cinema fatigue is just simply that at some point the genre picked up new audience members, and they got the stories they wanted to tell, and then they were done. But the genre keeps continuing, and if it became popular, it has a lot of money now, and I don't think it's, for me, I don't think it's like totally fair for audience members be downward to be like, oh, why the hell is this genre keep going? It's done now. Now they're just milking it. I'm like, no, they're not really milking it. Right. It's just there's a lot of people who love telling the stories and love hearing the stories, that it'll go on forever. It's like fairy tales. You wouldn't say that those are essentially being milked because we're retelling them 1,000 years later. It's just that we really love these stories and we want to tell them again. And so genres just work as a particular facet of storytelling that some people really just want to hear again. You know? True.
No, it is true.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's stories that can be applied to any point in your life. Like anytime, any of these like fairy tales or like Disney stories have been remade over and over and over and over again is probably the one time where it makes sense to remake something, as opposed to, superhero films where you got a lot of content to rework or just stick to the comic books. You can do either one.
Yeah.
But with fairy tales or any like Disney fables or anything, they were written in a way that was universal at the time, and it could be applied to any point in your life, because even if the characters were of another world or nonsensical or whatever, the stories that they were telling was something we could all relate to. Like even to be able to tell the Lion King, like all these many years ago, or even Little Mermaid, which was a green mermaid, Hans Christian Andersen mermaid that can be applied to anything really. And it's just, when they don't really say that, it kind of makes it just convolutes the whole story when they bring it out. But that's a whole other topic to talk about.
Yeah.
But
but you are bringing up a kind of point there, like all these arguments about like the remakes, the reboots, or you're changing the ethnicity or whatever. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of missing the point of what it means to be human. We kind of tell these stories to each other again and again because it means something, and it's for a newer generation. It's being told their particular way and all that. I think the whole concept of this movie is sacred and shouldn't be touched or retold again is kind of silly, because it's kind of like saying like, oh, the German version of the Little Mermaid, or was it German? I forget.
I forget.
Whatever. Yeah. Let's just say the German version of X fairy tale is the best fairy tale and should never be remade, and it should only be listened to in German. Mm-hmm. It's like the equivalent of saying that. It's like, well, no, because translations are a remake,
right?
They're a reboot in a way, because you have to, the whole getting it to a different language, you have to automatically literally revise the story, because there's aspects of the culture of the original language that are not going to translate well, and so there's either a lot of explaining you have to do, or you have to just literally transpose whatever cultural specific niche thing into the other cultural specific niche thing, so that way they at least get the idea. You know what I mean?
Right.
For example, there was a story where someone really loved tea in America. You would probably transpose it to a coffee. But it's the same concept, kind of, but there is some stuff that's missing. Yeah. So arguably, it's not the same story, and all of that,
Exactly.
But in short, just translation essentially is kind of it's a remake, a reboot, depending on the style of the translation and the purpose of the translation and all that. And I don't know. For me, it's just something I've seen that we've done. We've done it for thousands of years. We've done it since we started, using sounds as means of understanding meaning behind it.
Yeah.
The skull, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
All of the weird thoughts in the gray matter. We use sounds to get it across, and now we're using all these other expressions.
Yes. One example, I'm pretty sure is a British film that's been remade into an American film. I can't think of it right now, but I'm pretty sure there's plenty of them. But if there was somebody that lived in an apartment, they wouldn't call it a flat in America. So there's, like you say, language is changed. There's nuance that's changed. Certain things that we do that would be in those many lists of top 10 things that looks or seems weird to Britons when they move to America. Things like that.
Yeah.
Like it's things that we do that are different, things that other cultures have done prior to us. So if a movie was remade from like eons ago to now, there's certain things that are going to be modernized.
Yeah.
And
that have to be, or you can even like retell the story in a particular way, because all of a sudden, like something's happening in modern times that it's like, oh, that old classic story, that would be great to revitalize and use in this way. But instead of that person doing this job, what if they're doing this job? Because now the meaning of the story adds all this depth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, to me, that's where the reboots kind of make sense. But that's where I do see the argument, though, when you blend the very human desire to retell a story with capitalism. Then, yeah.
Right.
So I'm not trying to say, like, all remakes, are essentially sacred just simply because it's following the human spirit of retelling.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are literal shit just because the cash grab turned it into a soulless, film. Basically.
Yes. Yeah, for real, man. Okay, what was that movie that recently came out as of the time of this recording of this podcast? A recent movie that came out where it was either remade or a sequel of, and there were so many references to like modern day capitalism and how the government's keeping us down, blah 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 blah. All these things that they added to the story that wasn't in the original story that people see. I'm glad I forget this movie because I know I'm not gonna watch it anyway. But that was one of the arguments for why the movie was so bad, and there was even some examples of it. Man, what the hell was it? There's a bunch of like teens or young people talking about stuff like, oh, it's like, this is above your pay grade. You weren't around long enough to even know why this is even an issue type of thing. Like, these kids would not be talking about this unless they were all just reading Wikipedia and they were taking assumptions of what was going on. Because it was the type of stuff that if you lived in the 80s or 90s, we understand, because it took growing pains to get to where we are now.
Yeah.
Not growing pains the TV show, but growing pains of life. You know, because every decade there was a lot of start and stop. The 70s was always that through line of where we're trying to come together through comedy and sharing, like all of our things that we're all into. Comedy, music, all these things that we all love. But then there are outside forces that do put, little influences in the young minds. And over the course of time, those young minds become politicians or fucking people that run stuff that shouldn't be running things. Because there's, whether people know it or not, there's more good than bad. It's just we only hear from the bad, and that's I'm all over the place right now. So
no. I think because you're onto something there, because you're essentially, I think kind of what you're pointing at is like the purpose of critique, where it's like, okay, so we understand it's important to retell our stories. So, I mean, you have your opinion of like, oh, I don't watch any retellings. I don't listen to any retellings. I only read from the original language. Sure. That's all in existence. But that's where I think once that starts happening, the retellings and all of that, or even to the original stories themselves, that's where the job of critique comes in, where it's like, okay, what is it it's trying to say? What is it adding to the narrative of this particular, topic of discussion or whatever, and all of that. And so like what you're adding is like, okay, does it really bring anything to the table that's kind of worth discussing? And if so, how so, and all of that stuff. So like whatever movie it is that you're talking about, I mean, I think that's an interesting critique of having it be the young people talking about these things that they potentially don't know anything about in the construct of the narrative. What does that say? Is it efficient? Is it working well? And I don't know. I think all of those are, at that point, to me, those are the most interesting conversations.
Yeah.
Over versus something's like good or bad, because it's like, everything's kind of good or bad individually, subjectively, depending on someone's taste. But what's more interesting to me is, okay, but what does it have to say? What does it have to add? What does it have to take away? What new perspective does it bring? And something even that most people would consider a bad film, a bad song, a bad artwork, still can add a twist to the conversation, and therefore it, just because a bunch of people consider it bad doesn't mean it should be dismissed from the conversation as a whole, because it is bringing something to the table that nothing else that's considered good is bringing.
Yeah.
Which to me, that tends to be a lot of, like, I get told a lot that I like a lot of really bad films, but I'm just seeing that this film is bringing this, even if it's a small element, it's still bringing something to the table. And I always feel like that's why, like, I could talk to you about a lot of this stuff, because I feel like you do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You know, you see that, we can agree, like with The Flash, we can all agree that CGI is terrible. And sure, director Andy Muschietti, or is that how you say his name?
Andy,
Okay, I apologize if I fucked up his name.
Yeah,
but sure, the director, because I don't know if you've heard him, he said that the CGI is that way because it's from the distorted perspective of Barry Allen when he's in the chromosphere. And I'm like, okay, yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Still shitty CGI.
Yeah.
Like, we can still say that.
Yes.
You know, I'm understanding, sure, okay, I don't know if... I really don't know if, like, he came up and it's like, okay, we have a lot of money, but we're going to make the CGI really bad, though, because we're going to do it from his perspective.
Right.
I feel like that's an after-the-fact thing. But let's say it's not. Let's say he came in and it's like, no, we're going to purposely make the CGI really bad because it's from that perspective. Fine, whatever. But still, that CGI was bad.
Yeah, it was.
Like,
It was.
Even if that's true, then that's still holding within it the concept that the CGI is bad.
Right.
You know,
It
but
is.
that doesn't, that doesn't have to make the whole movie bad. The Flash still brought in some interesting concepts to the whole genre as a whole.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, it did, man. Like, I mean, because we could think about how bad a lot of green screen films were back in the day, but the substance was still there. Like the film, Altered States has one of the worst blue screen, like Tron, you know. Yeah. But at the time we weren't thinking that, and that still holds up to us. These stories still hold up to us. So at the end of the day, that's what should matter when it's more of an argument of us just being spoiled too much. It's kind of like if somebody bought a 4K TV expecting the best.
And then they showed an analog VHS tape and they're like, no, this is bad. This is shitty. And it was like, well, okay, but you gotta think of it in context, think of it in its time, and also think of the feeling that you're getting from it, what it's making you say, et cetera, et cetera. And even if it wasn't purposeful, those things are still there.
Yes.
It's in literary analysis, you call it it's the what's it called, the textual damn it. Okay, cut this.
It's the forgetting where you came from bias, or forgetting what got. It's something like that.
Yeah,
Maybe that's where you're going.
But anyways, I don't know. It's interesting. The like, for example, again, The Flash is kind of the swan song of the DCEU, and so that's an interesting film where if you put it in the same conversation as like Endgame for the MCU and its first, 3 phases, which was that experiment of using movies the way television tells stories, right? As an experiment. So if you put The Flash up with Endgame, and then you put it up with Unforgiven as a swan song of a type of Hollywood Western, right? But it's also critiquing that Western. And you put it up against all of that, I think there's an interesting conversation that all of those movies kind of say about how to end a phase, or what it means to end a phase, or what it means to talk about, in a meta type commentary way, to talk about everything that came before it, to be a swan song in a way. And so to me, that doesn't, Flash being bad or good, people being fatigued of superhero movies, it's more, what does it add to the conversation? This whole thing,
right?
Which is so
true.
So as this episode being an introduction to all of our future other episodes, that kind of gives you an idea as a listener of kind of what Jason and I kind of want to talk about. We more want to focus on what do these things have to bring into the conversation? What can we use to bounce off of it and say about the human condition, or about art, art forms in general, and all that good stuff. So
definitely. Definitely. It's crazy to think. Like, it's just, we're just living through those times where we actually are aware of what's going on when it comes to the films we put out. Because there's a lot that goes into it, and I'll try to wrap it up because I know we're going way over time, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, we're gonna so that we all know, we're gonna try and keep these in the length of time of a 90s popular television show.
Yeah.
45 minutes to an hour with ads.
Yes. Yeah. Or you can skip the ads and you basically get a 45-minute show.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no,
Yes.
well, I mean, or maybe there'll be an hour. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, true. Oh yeah.
You already know, but it is. Yeah.
Yes. But it's like it's a full argument to be made on top of the arguments to be made. Because I mean, if you think about when all the directors started to mention the fatigue because they were discounting superhero films, Martin Scorsese having his stuff to say, and everybody else, and then Tarantino having his stuff to say. I mean, it's a thing where on one end they can say, they can't really talk much about superhero films because where superhero films even derive from, if you take like X-Men, for example, they were a metaphor in and of itself. There could be an argument to be made that some of the metaphors could get lost in the plot because of film and just worrying about action, but it's there, especially for anybody that's a fan of the comic books. It's all over. I mean, like even with like Captain America, like there's certain metaphors that have held over into the films that just, I mean, either they weren't written for whatever reason or they just didn't want to be as on the nose with their subjects, which you can go back into why a lot of films nowadays, if they're remade and they're remade for like a younger audience, it's definitely not on the fault of the younger people because that's what it is just Hollywood discounting them for being people that can actually understand metaphors. Because on one end, and I'm going all over the place, damn it. On one end, you could say that like younger people are prone to be smarter than us a lot faster because they're given a lot of devices we weren't given. I wasn't given a home computer until I was like 17, 18 years old, and they're born into computers, but home computers at that time in the mid 90s were just becoming a thing to where they're in the house and affordable to everyone. So as far as having the stuff on the home computer at that time, they're given more access to stuff. Like they're born into YouTube, born into Wikipedia. Like that stuff we had to wait for process over time. So on one end, you could say that, they can understand metaphor. And then on the other end, there are movies that came out around that time that some people kind of lose the plot, like American Psycho or Fight Club. They forget the metaphors behind those films and they become these like, I can relate to Tyler Durden so much. I can relate to Patrick Bateman. But American Psycho, the film, was written as like a feminist film. So you probably can't relate to him unless you really read between the lines.
Yeah.
So there's arguments to be made on both ends. It just depends on who the audience is.
Yeah.
So, and then going back to like the directors, Martin Scorsese and Tarantino, they can have their arguments, but they started genres on their own that became these things that became oversaturated. Like there became these Tarantino types, all these people trying to make the next Tarantino type of movie.
Or the gangster movies.
Yes.
Scorsese. I mean, I think we have a friend, Zach, who he's, not totally into the gangster cinema, which is fine. And yeah, if there was, there's a few though that he's going to enjoy, and sure, the genre is going to move on after him, and that's it. But that's what I'm saying. Audience B, C for that genre, they're not audience A. So, there's,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They come in after the fact.
Yeah, that's where I feel like Scorsese and Tarantino are kind of forgetting that, where it's just it's like, not all these movies are going to be for you because it's a genre on its own. You have your own genres that you like, and no one wants their genre to end, and the genre is not going to end. It's simply literally because it's like an Ouroboros. It's just no one wants it to end. So it's going to continue. The genres that no one cared about, they ended. You don't know what they are because they never existed. They never existed past 500 years ago. I'm sure, like we go back 1,000 years, there's some weird genres that existed that at some point people were just like, I don't really care anymore.
Right.
And no one cared, and then it never, I don't know, got lost in time or something.
Yes, for real. That is so true. There's so many things like which Speaking of which, because I guess it's kind of on subject, but apparently Disney lost a bunch of their films or their classic animations. I need to read more into it because I'm just throwing it out there, but that's kind of an example of like there are films that are lost in time. That there could be that one film that that started its own genre where we're at a time where we can't even fathom another genre. It's kind of like trying to think of another genre of music. Like there would have to be a new instrument created and then some new sound, that some weird sound that's, if music exists on Earth 2, that they're using that sound because guitars don't exist on Earth 2, like synthesizers don't exist.
And this is a perfect stopping point because I already know what I want to do, what I want to talk about for the next episode, and we can literally segue into it now. So if we want to give some conclusions, but hold that thought.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cliffhanger. Okay. Shit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Maya and Jason.
Yes.
And we talked about cinema fatigue on our first episode of Oddio Podcast. So we are definitely going to see you soon. For us, it's going to be like in a minute. But for you, it'll be whenever you click the play button on the next topic.
Yes, sir. Right. So signing out.
And here is our outro.